Hi, everyone.
Great. Thanks for the introduction. That's me. I started my career in graphic design over a dozen years ago, and as a book cover designer. And if you were to tell me that I was going to be designing services for the government at that time, I would have thought you were talking to somebody different. I've got a pretty diverse range of experiences in the design world, and while going through it, didn't really understand exactly how one job was going to lead to the next. I didn't really have a clear path to where I am today, but looking back, I can see that my common thread was really trying to understand and address the context that people were living in with the work that I was trying to help them with. I started out as a book cover designer. Did health communication design, infographics, service design, user experience design, and along the way, I pushed myself to try to collect the skills that I needed to take on different projects, whether or not they were design specific. I do this work because I'm an optimist. I think it's really important to go into this work with an attitude that things can change. We built the world how it is, or people did, and we can change it. That being said, I get really frustrated when I see waste of time, money, energy that could have easily been avoided if people took the time to think about the people they were designing for and how it was going to impact them. So here are a couple of my early book covers. Even then, I was thinking about how my work fit with the audience and the people I was designing for. So if you were looking for a lighthearted romantic comedy, you wouldn't try to find something that was designed like the cover on the right. I've designed hundreds of book covers, and the ones that I like the best didn't always seem to make it to print. So I thought if I couldn't have a seat at the table in publishing, I would make my own table after hours, trying to develop creative projects. So this right here is a gallery show in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and I got 14 different lettering artists to interpret the words of Walt Whitman, the back of the shirts had the same text but just written very plainly, and the idea was trying to give people a sense of how things are designed, how things are created, really impact the way that you perceive and understand them. And I had a poet who worked with me at a publisher read the fuller poems to give you more of a context of how it all relates. And so this took about 3 months to put together. I curated the show, managed the production, worked with the printer, did the PR, fundraised, and just figured things out as they came up. I was able to get Monotype Imaging to donate like $700 so that I could give T-shirts out at the opening for everyone who came in to the show, walking the line between fine art and commercial art and trying to extend the show out into the street. And at the same time, I was working with a good friend of mine, Ken Morton, who's a New York City-based photographer, on an idea about representation, portraiture, and authorship. And we came up with 4 different characters for him to play, which I shot photos of and edited a small video trying to get a sense for who these different characters were. I also wanted to pull it as far as I could, so I got 4 different artists to take a look at these characters we created and give a vision of like what kind of tattoo they had. And then Ken took portraits of these tattoo artists, and I thought it was kind of interesting. You know, the tattoos say something about the character, you know, but they also say something about the person who created the work as well. And so I asked 4 writers to also interpret those characters, and created a newspaper and a website to publish the work. The poster on the left there is also the show opening poster for a barbershop. It seemed like the perfect place to hold the show as like a common public space where people go and kind of shape and craft what their identity is. So this is the opening, and one of the authors of the work was getting his hair cut. I wanted it to be something that was open during the day so that people could kind of stumble in and experience it. And that's me. I decided to get 4 changes of hairdos in over the course of the opening. Every half hour I would get a haircut and kind of walk around the gallery, barbershop, and talk to people. And it was interesting. I really felt different by the time I left. It was so that whole project took a year and a half to put together, and it was actually held at a barbershop in Chelsea. And it was really fun and exciting, and I got to work with 10 really creative, fun artists, but at the end of the day, the show came down. And it just made me think, is there some way that I can take all this creative energy and push it forward into work that sustains and is also somehow more impactful? So I decided to go to grad school to work on projects with a community context. And so I quit book covers and took a road trip in the month leading up to grad school to talk to people that I admired who were doing really interesting, creative, and public-facing work. And I decided to develop a podcast and interview all these people and push it out into the world. And I'd never interviewed anyone. I've never had a podcast. And you know, it really gave me a sense of connecting with people on that level through interviewing. Really led me to really invest in ethnographic research and really understand people in the context that they're in. So this is Baltimore, and I had never seen a vacant building before moving to East Baltimore. My studio was a couple blocks from where they were shooting, where they had shot The Wire, and was also close to the Johns Hopkins medical campus. And that was interesting to me because I wanted to work with an underserved community, but also I also had this idea that there were, you know, really important information about health that was out there, but that just was not getting communicated because the people who were trying to deliver the information just didn't really understand the people they were trying to communicate with. So one of the first projects I worked on I didn't say where I went to school. It was MICA in Baltimore, and it was the first year of their social design program. And we were trying to figure out what to call ourselves. Were we social designers, social impact designers? It was a fun time to kind of create an experiment. And so this right here is a mind map from one of my first projects in Baltimore, where I collaborated with a couple other designers and the Baltimore City Health Department to address a problem that the city was facing with high teen pregnancy. It was twice the national average at the time. And so this was us, me and the other designers, trying to kind of walk in the shoes of people who were teens in Baltimore, and why might people get pregnant. And so we use this as a way to get a little bit of grounding before developing surveys and running focus groups with about 75 youth in Baltimore to ask really uncomfortable questions about sex. But it was important because what we got from that was an understanding of why, what were ways that people understood contraception, who they would listen to for advice. It turned out it was their just older siblings or cousins of that sort, and what were certain medias that we could reach them. And so based on the research theme we uncovered was that it was important to them to choose the method that was right for them. And so we developed a You Choose campaign, which had all these different rotating U's as part of the graphics. And as I mentioned, the teens looked up to and listened to people who were just a little bit older than them. And there was a video that we created with a youth group that asked people about what they wanted to do when they grew up, what was important to them, and their thoughts on pregnancy. And so it was a way that people would come to the site through the different channels that we were advertising, and see what was important to other people and help them kind of figure out what might be good for them. And so this is our basement studio in East Baltimore. And for my thesis, I wanted to explore something that I thought was overlooked in that campaign, that I thought was critical to really make that campaign a success. I wanted to create an intervention at the decision point where a teen was talking to their healthcare provider about different methods and what was right for them. There were statistics that I learned about certain methods being much more effective, and if they were counseled in a certain way, people were more apt to choose certain methods. So, like the previous example, I developed a survey and interviewed over 20 healthcare providers to in their settings, in their doctor's office if possible, to get a sense for what that encounter was like, and what it might be to have that conversation. And so patterns emerged through talking with these healthcare providers about patients' lack of understanding in the relationship between birth control and side effects. And that led to switching between methods, which led to decreasing their effectiveness. So I created a print and digital learning tool for patients and providers to use during consultation, or as a general reference, and worked with a nurse to vet the information and language and make sure everything was correct and accurate. So I was at one point working with the Baltimore City Health Department on this, And when I started telling them that I was learning all these things that was leading to side effects as something that was missing and important to the conversation, they decided they didn't want anything to do with me. So I tried to talk to people from the state health department and some clinics, and they expressed interest in this work, but ultimately I was unable to find someone to pilot with me. So this just kind of ended up sitting on the shelf, and it was a hard lesson, and one that I keep learning sometimes, that your partners are important. Your work lives and dies with them, and if I had been able to work closer with the health department and maybe somehow convince them that the data I was finding was correct, maybe something could have been different. But moving on, there was, this is one more health communication piece. This is a poster that a nurse or an administrative assistant designed for a talk that I gave at Johns Hopkins University. This came about after attending a lecture about community-based participatory research, which I had no idea what that was, but it sounded interesting. So I went to the talk. I was definitely the only one who wasn't a researcher or a medical student. But after the talk, I was excited. This group were researchers who worked with at-risk communities to try to develop health interventions, and as part of that work, they're ethically obligated to communicate back to the communities that they were partnering with, and I saw a really big opportunity to try and help these health researchers and staff have some tips and tools for better reaching their community and thinking about what's the right way that someone might want to learn about this health issue that they were dealing with. So got them to think about the context that the people they were partnering with were living in. And so the core of the presentation really came down to trying to distill information through human-centered practices and communication best practices. And so these are kind of like the three main bullet points I wanted the healthcare workers to really come away with. Bless you. And I left them with some tips and worksheets to help them better communicate with their partners. What I really took to heart was that they ran a survey after this talk, and over 90% of it was faculty, staff, researchers at Johns Hopkins. They found something that they were able to incorporate into their work, and I take that as hopefully they were able to improve how they worked with their communities. And nothing that I was sharing was revolutionary, but I just had, as a designer, a different mindset and perspective, and was able to transfer some knowledge to these highly educated, very smart people that could help them think in a little bit of a different way. And so after grad school, I started a public art and community engagement project. This is Baltimore within Maryland, and Baltimore kind of ends at the Chesapeake Bay, and the bay is just horribly polluted, and so I thought maybe I could do something to help. So I had this idea for a series of murals and walking tours to make the the invisible infrastructure of the water system visible to help raise awareness of, what happens in your neighborhood impacts the bay and the health of it. And so I worked with a local nonprofit called Blue Water Baltimore to really get connections and develop relationships with different communities that were interested in working on watershed issues. And before I designed anything, I spent a few months talking to different communities and just walking around this specific area, this watershed that I was living in, where all the water from the top of the watershed drains down into the bay. And so I focused on this specific geographic area with a campaign to, show people how their actions were related. And it's not only just you, keeping the trash out of the sewers, but it's also, the cumulative impact of everyone in all these neighborhoods, trying to, get people to see themselves as part of a bigger collective that could make some impact. And so after a couple months, I had some ideas and convened like a kickoff meeting with community leaders and civic leaders to try to get some buy-in for my ideas and some sense of shared ownership of this concept going forward. Blue Water Baltimore was a partner throughout. They introduced me to the community leader of Madison East End, and one of the first things I did was develop some stencils to make a little bit more visible, that a quote that they like is "trash on the street, pollutes what we eat," and just kind of visualizing, that the stuff in the drains, impact these aquatic life that lives there. And so I developed a series of stencils, did some community engagement and stenciling projects, and tried to, always I make one thing and then think about what can I do with this that also kind of extends the impact of the work. And so, with these stencils, people were stenciling them on their storm drains, and I was trying to make a relationship between that and that activity, and having them have something they could bring home and kind of think about, how their actions were related to the creatures that live in the bay. I took this stencil idea, and upon learning that this park that was centrally located in the watershed used to have this giant river running through it, I thought it was a perfect opportunity to kind of highlight and visualize the relationship between the park and the neighborhoods and the bay. So the white dotted line right there was where I thought I was originally going to do some artwork, and the spot that I ended up working was the blue dotted line. And that ended up being for the best, because talking to the Friends of Peterson Park and a couple other community stakeholders, they convinced me that painting 1,000 feet of blue paint was maybe more trouble than it was worth. And through negotiations with them and a couple meetings, I was able to get them to agree to having a smaller painting, about 60 feet in length, at like a critical juncture of the park next to a school, so it was highly visible. And I just had an easier time because I negotiated with the community members there, and we were able to come up with something that ultimately made the work better and more impactful, I think. I painted the walkway with 150 middle school kids in art and in history classes, and they came in waves over 2 days. Going back, checking out the painting the day after it was done, I heard a kid just say like, "I made that," and really connecting to the ownership of the work, which was, which made me very, very happy. And so here's one of the stencils close up, and the language that we used tried to get people to think in different ways about why it's important to protect the bay. It may not be about, that you care about, the happy smiling crabs in the bay, but it has an economic impact, and potentially jobs are at stake. And so, I was flexible with my original idea of a series of walking tours, and worked with a bicycle nonprofit to create a bicycle tour throughout the watershed. It was just far too long to walk, and this route that I was proposing actually connected the bay to other green spaces. So I was trying to lay the groundwork for the idea that this could be potentially a new greenway. I wanted to show people sort of the bright spots that I found in the watershed, but also some problem areas where community impact could help. This is me outside of a dump, talking to people about how all the runoff came from the dump and ended up into the bay. At different parks throughout the community, throughout the neighborhoods, I was able to get community leaders to give a little talk about their particular, neighborhood within this greater watershed, trying to give them a sense of, of a collective action. At the end, we finished our bike tour by the bay. And that's my little brother on the right. He's a screen printer, and he, screen printed a bunch of shirts for people to take away with them as a reminder of, hopefully what they learned. Again, I took one idea and just kind of ran with it as far as I could. T-shirts, mapping projects, posters, a blog, flyers. I was able to do all these things with some grant funding, and also just doing design projects on the side throughout about a year and a half. I left Baltimore for San Francisco, and the only two pieces that are really still in use are the stencils and a watershed art manual that I co-created with Blue Water Baltimore, and a mural at a farm by a school that I worked with an after-school group, because these were pieces of this greater project that they could own and really adopt to their usage. So I'm very particular about making sure that the work that I do is useful to the people that I'm working with, and really want it to be something that we co-create and co-own, and ultimately they own when I move on to another project.
Ben?
Yes?
Sorry to interject. Do you mind
Absolutely. Yeah, this was the project that I was working on last, and this I put together some slides that just kind of give you a sense of the process that we employed. So Code for America, just to back up, is an organization that partners designers and technologists with different local governments throughout the United States. The fellows, as they're called, are based in San Francisco and travel back and forth to their partner cities over the course of 11 months. So I worked with a developer and Salt Lake County to address an issue where they were having a problem with people failing to show up to court. And so we were going to go in and try to address that. But the first thing that we learned was that this failure to appear is not actually a metric, so it wasn't something that we could measure accurately. So we, in order to make sure that the work that we did had an outcome that, to show our improvement, we changed our metric to reflect something we could actually change, which was the success metrics for the county probation department that we were working with. So we changed it from failure to appear to success through a program. And so I'll just kind of walk through the different phases of the project and the work that we did. So we started out with discovery, working with the people in Salt Lake County to understand how they understood the problem and try to ran some exercises with them to see what they thought the root causes of some of these issues were. And from there we did interviews and observed case managers and clients interacting, over 20 such interactions, to get a sense for the problems that people on probation were coming up against. From there, we synthesized all that we learned. In other works, I've relied on Post-its to write down ideas and move them all around. But since we were traveling from San Francisco to Salt Lake City pretty frequently, I put everything into a giant spreadsheet, which we turned into data visualizations, so that we could see the connections between the data and share that with our partners at the county. And so we started with discovery, try to understand the problem, and identify through synthesis ways that we could address that problem. Then the next step is testing, prototyping different things to see if they make an impact. And so this was something called Jail Register, something we worked on with the county sheriff's department to try to see if this could be a potential solution. And we spoke to them on a Friday and delivered a working prototype on a Monday. And while it didn't ultimately succeed, it really allowed us to develop some trust working with them, turning around a solution so quickly. And so another project that we tested called ClientCom actually seemed to make an impact. And so we kept working on it in different iterations, and at each step we were going to Salt Lake County, talking to the probation officers, and getting their feedback on what was working, what wasn't, through a series of usability testings. And I mentioned metrics earlier. The way that we knew we were making progress is through creating baseline metrics at the start of our project, and then being able to see our improvement as we went along on these multiple iterations. And so finally, we've developed our thing. We want to deliver it. We want to pass it off. And so that involves a couple of steps. One, develop information about the work, how it was created, and show our progress along the way, so that others could see what we were doing and validate for themselves our progress. And then ultimately, that's my partner Kwan on the left, and our county partner Beth on the right, presenting to the Code for America Summit a few months back, which about 1,000 people working in government and technology attend, and from that we were trying to find other ways for this work to spread, and ultimately it's being redeployed in a different city this year, and continuing to grow. And as part of that delivery, it's you got to finalize your commitments and thank your partners. I was getting paid to do this work. They were volunteering their time very generously, and so it was important to keep that in mind. And then that leads to today, where now I'm delivering digital services for government, and I think this type of work is really important because experience design is centered around people. Government should work for everybody, and with a digital product you can scale it quickly and far and wide. And with that, I'd love to take any questions. Thank you.